welcome back. We were just having a heated conversation about women presidents and heads of states, and I could feel the energy and the emotions, doing rounds. What do you guys think about the fact that we only have one representative, one president, female president in Africa? What do you think about that, Mercy?
Just a short one. I think it then highlights the barriers that Carol was talking about.
Yes.
Those barriers are too many, and for so many years that they've prevented us as African women from getting into those leadership positions. So those barriers are with us. So we have really, as Diana said as well, that we then have to address each of those barriers. If we talk about the patriarchal nature of our society, it then means that we need to have more gender transformation initiatives that then change our perspectives, our ideas, our values around women. If we have lack of resources, lack of support for women's leadership, then it means we have to have specific initiatives or programs or policies that then seek to address those barriers. So it just shows that as an African continent, we are very far off, and we need to up our socks and to double up our efforts to ensure that we break these barriers for women.
When you say that, I remember reading somewhere that when it comes to representation of women, especially in parliament, what keeps them off actually taking up those positions is because of the way they are judged harshly. I mean, if a female politician versus a male politician, and they are found probably in the same crime, the crime for the female politician tends to be so much highlighted.
Right.
So how do we even deal with that? How do we begin dealing with that, Diana?
I don't know what I would answer. In fact, I would be curious to see what Carol says, but I'll just say develop a thick skin. I mean, to be honest, society tends to be very unfair to women when you expect women to, if you're too loud, then you're bossy.
Yeah.
If you're too timid, then you don't have confidence.
Exactly.
We can never win as a female leader.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that is the standard thing. We're actually having transformation. And for me, I see the opportunity with the younger generation even more, only because they are more flexible. They are not as discriminative as maybe the older generation is, on the account that our cultural systems were set up that way. Yes. Gender roles had been defined and all that. But the younger generation, especially the kids, just look at the kids, how they went to school together. They competed maybe on the academic performance or sports performance together. And therefore, you start seeing the person from the other gender equally. You don't see them much as, oh, this one is just supposed to be in the kitchen, because you've actually seen them together with you in class. So there's opportunity there, but that doesn't mean that we give up to advocating for also the older generation to see us. I mean, to be honest, if our president, if I can get a chance to advocate for inclusion of women in his cabinet and empower them, more women, not just a few, but the ones that are there, I love them, they're really doing good, but have more women, so that we as the younger generation see representation in that high level of power, then we're encouraged to be there.
So very well. When you observe the younger generation, the children, in their normal interaction, you'll be surprised. They don't see any barriers.
Yes.
And they don't even notice the stereotypes. The stereotypes come from us, because as young as, by the time we are born, we are already introduced to certain boxes. Girls are supposed to do this, boys are supposed to do this. But what I pick from what you're telling us is we need to change that perception.
Absolutely.
We need to empower these people. We need to empower our children from the house, from the small system that is the house, so that we give equal opportunities to the boy child, we give equal opportunities to the girl child. As women celebrate International Day, Carol, the other gender, they always keep on asking, what about International Men's Day? And I've been thinking about this. Is there a possibility of us just agreeing that gender bias is a human rights issue? It's not an issue. It's not a fight between men versus women. It's just a matter of fixing a problem what you call a historical problem. But at the same time, we cannot run away from the fact that if you look at the current setup of people in leadership, the makeup, it is almost certain that majority of people who are holding those positions are men. And we need to find a way to influence them, to understand that what we are dealing with is not their problem. They need to understand that gender inequality it's a problem for everyone, both for men and for women. How do we fix this?
I think the simple answer lies in the fact that gender roles are learned, so they can be unlearned.
Wow.
Yeah. So I think that's my very, very simple response.
Yeah.
And if we take some stereotypical issues, for example, girls were not sent to school, they were married off. Girls are now going to school, and they're not being married off. So there are just some basic things that have changed over the years. Gender is a social construct, it is a learned issue, and it changes with time. The gender dynamics in the 60s was totally different from the gender dynamics we have now. And so patriarchy is a product of gender socialization, and it can therefore be unlearned. So I think we need to focus on the unlearning process of the socialization of our minds so that we can view women as equal partners in development. Julius Nyerere once said very powerfully that you cannot develop a continent when half of its population is not involved. You must involve the other half, otherwise you'll be developing halfway. We need full development, so we must involve the other 50%, 52, I think it's 52%. We must involve the majority, because 52 is a majority out of 100. So if we are to involve the majority, then we must address some of these gender stereotypes. We must address these cultural and societal issues that sit firmly in the structures that we need to dismantle. Otherwise, we'll be going round in circles. And we cannot even begin talking. At some point, we spoke about tokenism. We can't begin to talk about tokenism, because if you're excluded, even your value will not be seen. So at the point you're being included, no one looks at the value, they're looking at the point of inclusion, which should have been done in the first place. Then coming to the issue of gender within the rights perspective, non-discrimination is a right. You have a right to non-discrimination. You have a right to dignity. You have a right to equality. You have a right to the fullness, and I'm paraphrasing this, but you have a right to the fullness of life. And if we have gender discrimination, then you're standing in the way of the fullness of life of more than half of the population of this world.
Right. I know there's something Mercy didn't want us to talk about.
What's that? No, I just wanted to add to what Kara is saying. Earlier on, she talked about dismantling structures and systems that sort of, protect patriarchy. And I just want to say that let it not be lost on us that these systems were designed by men to protect them. So our first point of work, of intervention is to dismantle those systems. And these systems manifest themselves in the norms that we have, in the rules that we have as a society, in those stereotypes that we talk about, where they say a man cannot do this, a woman should not do this, a woman cannot be a leader. You know that women are soft people, women are emotional, women are compassionate people, so they really should not ascend to these positions, because these positions need, firm people, strong people. But, over time, we are proving them wrong. We are proving them that, women are capable. Women can be leaders. And especially, there's nothing wrong with being emotional. There's nothing wrong with being compassionate. Actually, COVID, I repeat again my point, that COVID has shown us that those values are very important for those in leadership. So I think for us as women, we just need to understand that the systems in place and structures cannot favor us. So all of us as a collective, and actually studies have shown that women, when they seem to progress when they work as a collective as opposed to individuals. So on this International Women's Day, I think my call would be that for women, particularly in Kenya, that let us work together. Let's come together as a collective and ensure that we first dismantle those structures. If you look at our cabinet, we are yet to achieve the 33% threshold. Right. Our PSS level, our diplomatic corps, all those things, we are falling short in all our positions of representation. So we need, women of Kenya, we need to come together and dismantle those systems and structures that protect men. Let me repeat, those systems and structures are in place to protect men, and they do not
Don't worry,
work
Mercy.
towards
I'm not
us.
going to ask you if the boy child has been neglected. I will not.
Please
I'm not going
don't.
there.
Yeah. Please,
I'm
yeah.
just being told to wind up, Diana.
Right.
It's International Women's Day. What plans do you have for the next 1 year? The previous year we were celebrating generation equality.
Yes.
Yes. So
Yes.
what plans do you have for this year, for yourself, for the work that you do?
Yeah, I mean, we're still in the COVID era, so I wanted to say maybe post-COVID, but I understand that we're in the COVID era. And
with us.
my plans is to continue helping people to unlearn their gender biases. In fact, when she was talking about unlearning, I smiled because my very first episode at the podcast with Diversity with Diana was actually unlearning diversity, which means that the things that unfortunately my counterpart, who is my age and is a male, has learnt is not the right thing. And so for the next year, I will continue helping people to unlearn their biases that they've had, and then to open up their minds for the possibilities of us being a gender equal society.
I can't wait.
I promise you that we will all benefit. It is not that when a woman is in leadership that she will benefit herself alone and her gender. It is actually for the common good of humanity. As Mercy has said, COVID-19 has shown us that the women leaders actually stepped up and did what was the needful, because we are human beings at the end of the day. All this other tough talk, toxic masculinity, friend, it did nothing for COVID-19.
Yeah, exactly.
We came back to our basic human being. We saw that we even saw who are the most important people in our society. If you are not an essential service provider, it showed you that what you're doing is actually not one of the basic needs. So we need to just open our minds up back to being human, restoring the human dignity that every single person deserves. That affirmative action is not a gender women issue, but it is an human rights. It's a human rights thing.
This is her standards, and we encourage women to have footprints all over the place in the society, in the community, and even have a digital footprint. For more about what our panelists are doing, I'm going to ask them to tell us where to find them on social media, starting with you, Diana. Where can we find you? Where can we follow what you do with your podcast and your advocacy work?
Right. So I'm on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter as Diana Sifuna. And for the platform, it's Diversity with Diana Podcast on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Thank you.
Mercy.
Thank you very much. I'm also on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter as at Mercy Jelimo. And for the organization, in also all the media platforms, we are at Crew Kenya, CAPS Crew Kenya. Thank you.
Don't be deceived. Carol is a glam mom, not a grandmom. She's a glam mom, and she is very much digitized.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and you can find me on Twitter at Agengo Carol with an E. On Facebook, I'm Carol Lucero Agengo, and on Instagram, I'm Carol Lucero Agengo. You can also follow Helpage. On Facebook, we're at Helpage Africa. On Instagram, we're at, on Twitter, we're at Helpage Africa, and we're also on LinkedIn, Helpage Africa. Thank you.
Well, what can I say? Thank you so much for finding time to have this conversation with us. We celebrate you today. We celebrate you on International Women's Day. And we will get in touch. Let's keep this conversation going. Let us empower women.
Right.
This conversation is not over. If you want to join us and continue talking about International Women's Day and the role of women in leadership in the fight for COVID-19 and equality, be sure to hit us up on social media. Find us at KTN Home on Facebook, at KTN Home on Twitter, or you can hit me up directly at Queenie Saina on Twitter, at Queenie Mbori on Facebook and Instagram. As usual, I'm always excited to be your host and to bring you amazing conversations and amazing stories of women who are doing amazing things in this country. Woman of the Week is Liz Mills. Mills is the new Australian basketball coach for the Kenya Morans and the first ever female coach for Kenya's men national basketball team.
Through her coaching, Morans recently qualified for the FIBA AfroBasket 2021 tournament after 28 years of attempting the Continental Championships. So perhaps Mills is what the doctor recommended for the underachieving national team. Basketball coaching in Africa remains dominated by men, and even most women teams are coached by men. After serving as an assistant coach at Patriots in Rwanda last year, Mills was last month appointed head coach of the Morans, the only woman head coach of a men's team. In a country where women are still fighting to get a slice in leadership positions, just being considered to coach the Kenya national basketball team is a huge bonus for her and many other women in sports. She says she wants her success with the Kenya team to inspire more women to take up basketball coaching. Liz Mills already has her place in history.